Now, moving into our fourth topic, the last topic of the speaker, we'll be discussing setting up an office or manufacturing and production facility, and insight on available options and the lessons learned. We'll be joined by Kelvin Chua. Kelvin is currently the CEO of Singbuild Construction and also the COO of Lee Urban Eco Park in Phnom Penh. Kelvin oversees all the daily operations and management of the park. The park was conceptualized in 2014, and the concept behind a $20 million mixed-use industrial park would be comprised of residential, commercial, and industrial development, with the concept of being eco-friendly in all the developments. Thank you so much, Kelvin, for joining us today.
Thank you.
It's fantastic wanting to understand your experience. Just to start off with, as we have other speakers, if you could briefly explain how you've come to base yourself in Cambodia and why you've chosen here, despite maybe some of the other options.
Yeah, so I came here purely by chance. Actually, back then in Singapore, I was a banker like Mr. Ong. I was in banking industry for about 6 years, advising high net worth clients. My last bank was probably Standard Chartered. It's one of the biggest international banks. Yeah, and I had an opportunity to come here because one of my clients actually wanted to invest here. So I came along with him. And when I came here, I saw the opportunities available, and I felt that there were a lot of potential. Of course, been here for the last 8 years. The first few years were not easy. I think market has tremendously improved, I think, ever since 2015, 2016, 2017. So for sure, a huge change since the last 8 years. And I would say spend most of my time here rather than Singapore now.
Okay, and how have you found that transition for yourself personally?
I've been pretty much used to living overseas since I was young, so I think I'm pretty used to it. But I think that, honestly speaking, from Singapore to Cambodia is only a 1.5 hour flight. So realistically, it's probably easier from us to go from Phnom Penh to Singapore than to go to other provinces anyway.
Yeah,
so
very.
So it's, with the convenience of flying, I mean, with post-COVID now, everything is opening up. So I think sometimes to us, I think to most of us here, it's like taking a bus.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's Cambodia's been fantastic with their response with COVID now, and there's no restrictions. So any attendees listening today, it's very simple. Hop on a plane, you'll be here in an hour and a half, fly almost into the center of Phnom Penh, and you're away.
Yeah.
Now, some members of the audience may be considering the benefits or challenges of production or manufacturing facilities in Cambodia. Can you share some of the options they could consider and elaborate on the benefits of those challenges?
Yeah,
or the options?
so just to quickly brief through as well, like what Storm mentioned, Michael, and Scott mentioned as well. So basically, you can own 100% of your own company.
Yep.
So anything you want to do with regards to production, you can set up a company on your own, basically, and you do not need to have a local partner. The main industrial climate in Cambodia is textile and garment. Basically, it employs more than 750,000 people, which is the largest employer group. We cover about 1/3 of the country's GDP. Right now, there's about 50, reported up to about 50 special economic zones in Cambodia. Special economic zones usually would, and basically you can set up your factories in SEZs as well as non-SEZs. But the SEZ has a more straight-through service. Other than that, with regards to any tax incentive, it's basically the same. Cambodia has this investment program called the QIP. The QIP allows you to have 3 years on tax on profit exemption up to about 9 years. And anything you import to export out is basically zero tax. So basically, like I mentioned just now, garment, whereby textile and garment is the largest employer group. A lot of them actually import in from China and various other places, and then they export out to US, Canada, and Europe. So for those people, they're under the QIP scheme and they are not being taxed in terms of their imports, as well as for their profits, they're exempted up to about 9 years.
Okay.
Tax on profit.
And if there are any more questions on the QIP or any other tax related, we will have RHT Law will be featuring in the Q&A session. So if you do want to ask any specific questions, see, tax questions are always hard, but as best we can, we'll answer those at the end of the webinar. Now, what about, you discussed about the textiles and garments. What about Singaporean companies who are wanting to set up a commercial or representative office here?
So that's even much simpler. Of course, you can't compare it to Singapore where you just log on online and go to BizMall and set up a company within, let's say, an hour. But over here, it's not too difficult as well. Basically, you go to Ministry of Commerce to set up a brand new company. The time frame usually is about 2 weeks to a month, depending on how busy they are at the point of time. One important thing to note is that you need to have a registered address for your office with a lease contract. So they do want to justify that you do have a office space or space of work per se. So that's a bit more, which means you do need to source for a place to stay, or you do need to have a rep office at the point of time when you register for the company. QIP application with CDC is usually about 3 to 4 months. Consultancy companies as well as law firms usually can do that, or any SEZs that you go to, or any industrial zones that you go to, they usually can assist in that. Basically for office rentals, you're looking at US $15 per square meter and up. That's maybe for grade C. Grade B is probably around 25, and grade A is probably around 35. So depending on what's your benchmark in terms of your company and where you want to be, usually it's on those rates, so it's significantly cheaper than Singapore.
I was going to say, how do those prices relate to a grade A Singaporean commercial office? 10 times.
Yeah, and factory rentals are usually about US $2.50 and above, but they only count the built-in area. So all your cargo area outdoors and your car parks and all that are not counted.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fantastic option for people. As we just explained, it's only an hour and a half flight away, and you've got office here, which is 10 times cheaper.
Yeah.
The options obviously are right there. And thank you for some of the information around setting up the companies, and that's always interesting to know. Now, before we sort of conclude this topic, as we have to most of the speakers getting their opinion on the future, which is always hard to guess. What are your thoughts on your investment or business opportunities coming up?
I think, to be honest, when I first came here 8 years ago, they were not so ready for the A brands. Probably market just opened at a point of time. A lot of B and C brands started to come in. But over the last 8 years, in fact, over the last, I would say in the last 24 to 36 months, you start to see a lot of A brands coming in. Big brand of hotels like the Rosewood is in. Fraser's has a lot of Aquarii has a lot of hotels and apartments coming up. Novotel is setting up, Hilton is setting up. So from a real estate perspective, you start to see all these big brands coming in. The Marriott as well is coming in. So I think that right now a lot of good Singapore business people have a lot of A brands on their hands. I think that is one option, be it within through F&B or even hotels and even real estate. I think that the market here is ready for that kind of investment. One key thing to note, I think, is that you've got to make sure you partner the right people. We have a lot of Singaporeans here who are very successful in their own right in their respective industries. I think that those can be the first people that you look at, right? I think it's, as Michael and I always say, there's a great business plan, but if you have the wrong partners, you will fail. If you have a normal business plan, but you have great partners, I think your business plan will move and change along the way, and you can become very successful. I think just look at some of us here who are pretty good models of us being able to stick it around here and make it. It's important to be mindful of who you're dealing with. Especially if it's local partners, some of them may have some political connections or military connections, which you may or may not need in your respective industry. If you do need, then I think it's good. The one who pays you the most may or may not be the best partner. I think it's important to find the right partner with the right fit at the right price for those who are in the franchise business. And I think you've got to look at the politics and understand the culture as well. It's not Singapore. Policies and all that. I think the policies here are pretty clear. I wouldn't say they're not clear, but still, because it's a different culture and a different country, they may have their way of doing things. So I think you do need to immerse yourself a little bit into the culture, which brings me back to my final point. I think it's very important to have a medium to long-term investment horizon. I think most of us who are successful here are probably have the tough times in the first 2-3 years. And that's where after that you start to see really exponential growth because by then you will probably more or less be very used to the kind of culture and the kind of methods like Mr. Koh mentioned. You've got to understand the local people here and then be able to work with them, even your staff and all that. Like below 35, they're all around my age. So they're really all really ready to go forward and learn, and they're very willing to and happy to learn. I think that I did an article just 2-3 days ago with the Chinese newspaper. I did mention that the workforce is young and people here are very willing to learn, and and we're always growing and they're very hungry for growth. money is important, but I think that growth for them is probably more important nowadays, especially in the last 2-3 years. You start to see the younger generation looking more for growth in terms of their career, which if you can offer them, I think they'll be more than happy to stick with you.
And speaking about the partnerships, what were some of the avenues you used to make those great partners and that have really helped you build your business?
Yeah, I think you've got to find the right partners and understand partners thoroughly. Most the business community here is very small. I would say that people will know us and we will also know people. It's good to share amongst the Singaporean groups or, with Michael or any one of us that's around here. Mr. Koh, I'm sure we all know a lot of people who have certain experience or who is already in the kind of industry that you're in. Getting some insights, looking at what they've done. I think we're all business people. I think we'll be able to tell, after doing 2 or 3 trips, really understanding whether they're the right partnerships and whether they're the right fit. Yeah.
I think for any attendees as well, the information, if you want to get in contact with any of us, will be available. Yeah. So I'm sure yourself, you're more than welcome to
sure.
people directly.
Like Michael mentioned, we're more than happy to talk over a round of drinks when you guys do come over.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, that's been fantastic, Kelvin. Thank you so much for that information. I really agree with the partnerships. I think if anything from today, we can understand of who you're dealing with is super important. So thank you so much.
Thank you.